Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Hope everyone had a great Christmas. Today we're closing out 2024 by looking at my favorite records of the year. Talk about some experiences I got to have because of the podcast. Talk about some of the awesome things that happened on the podcast in 2024. And just reflect on this year before we head into 2025, where As the Story Grows will celebrate its 10th year anniversary. Absolutely insane. Before we dive in to the meat of this week's episode, I want to say thanks so much for listening to As the Story Grows. Thanks for listening today. And if you've been with us at any point during this year, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate it. If you chose this to be the first time you checked out the podcast, welcome. Thanks so much for listening. If you aren't subscribed to the podcast, I would love it if you hit subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. We've had so many people subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. YouTube is the easiest place for me to see subscriptions, and I appreciate it. Lots of people have left comments over on YouTube, and I've been reading them on the podcast all year. So thank you so much for leaving comments, for sending emails, for subscribing, and for being a fan of the show. You can find links in the show notes to our Discord server, to our mailing list, or you can support the show financially over on Patreon. I also have to give a big shout out to the people who help make this podcast run every single week. To the team at Adam Splitter, PR, Shane, Tori, Tim, Rachel, Amy, Casey at Iodine Records, Bob Bradley from Bradley Promotion, John Freeman from Freeman Promotion, Austin from Secret Service PR, Stephanie Marlowe from Another Side PR, Allie at The Syndicate. These are the people who make sure there are bands for me to talk to. Yes, I'm listening to the bands. I'm interviewing. I'm doing the research. I'm editing. I'm uploading. I am As the Story Grows. But without the people I just listed, there are no bands for me to talk to week in and week out. And I could not do this show without them. And I'm so grateful for all these people who I've gotten to work with this year, and I look forward to continuing those relationships further. 2025 is already building out to be a stacked roster right from the get-go in January, and there's even more on the way. And I'm so stoked for what the future holds. Let's kick off talking about some records. Similar to how I did last year's Best of podcast, if you remember, I went through my top 10 EPs, and then I did the top 25 full-length records on the podcast. On the mailing list, the full list of 30 EPs is already live. And depending on when you're hearing this, the list of 50 full lengths is also live on the mailing list. So if you click the Substack link in the show notes, you will find both of the full list. And if you're a Patreon member or want to know even more, full-length records number 51 through 100 is up on the Patreon page for members at $1 a month. So if you're interested in that, join us over on Patreon. So coming in at number 10 for my EPs, we have a band Owl and their EP Ghost of Summer. This is kind of a doomy, sludgy black metal. This is a Bandcamp discovery for me. Absolutely. Just kind of checking out the doom metal tag on Bandcamp, clicking albums. And this is an album that really stuck with me and struck a chord. Just a huge fan of this EP. Coming in at number 9, we have Teardrops, Something to Cry About. Hey, we had Teardrops on the podcast this year. Incredible project featuring members of There Were Wires and Doom Riders. And just like, if you like hardcore, post-hardcore, kind of hardcore in that emo vein, Teardrops, this EP, Something to Cry About, is for you. It's phenomenal. Coming in, we have another Iodine band with Unsufferable. This is Rob from 108. This is his new really extreme hardcore band, but it's definitely, I think, the heaviest band Rob has ever been involved in. They dropped 2 songs, and their self-titled 2-song EP, single, 7-inch, however you want to frame it, is phenomenal. I'm a big fan of these 2 songs, and I think if you listen to this podcast, you will be too. In at number 7, I have another podcast guest, Choke Cherry. Choke Cherry was definitely one of the surprise artist interviews for me this year. When I heard their song, I fell in love with the band. I love shoegaze. And so Choke Cherry was an instant like, yeah, I want to talk to that band who's making music I love. But the ladies in Choke Cherry were so much fun, and it was such a delightful conversation. And I adored the chat I got to have with them. And then when Messy Star released, the EP just kind of blew me away. And it's phenomenal. And if you like shoegaze, you'll like Choke Cherry. In at number 6, Black Pegasus, Midnight Room. Black Pegasus also put out a full length this year that did not crack my top 100. But they're a band I really like. I heard the full length. I fell in love. They released Midnight Room. I also adored it. More kind of that sludgy, doomy, black metal inspired, just heaviness. It is just heavy. Midnight Room is great. Check it out. By the way, if I mention a band and you go, I would be interested in checking that album out. If you go to the Substack and click on the list, all the albums have links. So you can do that. All right. In at number 5, Entheos, who dropped An End to Everything. This is a killer EP. It's a great EP that comes off the back of the band's full length from last year, which I also loved. Talked to Cheney, had her on the podcast last year for the full length. And this is just a great EP. Entheos continuing to do Entheos things. This is a little less technical. It's a little more kind of straightforward death metal. There's some melodic moments in here, but this is not kind of the tech metal side that was on the full length. So if you like Entheos, but maybe want something a little more straightforward, this might be a road in. In at number 4, another Iodine Records band, Drought. Their EP is just called EP. Drought is a emo band. They dropped these 3 songs on Iodine, and let me tell you, this is emo straight to my heart. Old school kind of 90s emo. It's a phenomenal EP. Check it out. And at number 3, I have The Plot in You, and I cheated because I have volume 1, 2, and 3 on this list. All at number 3. The Plot in You, I really like them as a band. I honestly didn't get into the EPs until they released volume 3 late in the year. I knew they were releasing music, but it was not really on my radar. More just like I'm seeing singles drop and music videos pop up on YouTube, and not that the band was releasing EPs. Once I heard volume 3, I was blown away, and I immediately went back to get volume 1 and 2. And they're great EPs. The Plot in You is a great band. The EPs range from really heavy to more of the melodic stuff that the band was doing on Swan Song. So there's a range in like The Plot in You getting heavy again and The Plot in You continuing to push the melodic envelopes. And I just think they dropped 3 amazing EPs this year. And instead of trying to pick my favorite and maybe have The Plot in You show up 3 different times on this list, they get this number 3 spot all to themselves for 3 EPs. And at number 2 is The Armed, who dropped Everlasting Gaze. The Armed is a phenomenal band who continues to just defy whatever you think they're going to do. The band dropped Ultra Pop, which was an art hardcore masterpiece. Last year, they released Perfect Saviors, which was so perfectly bizarre because the band created a phenomenal indie rock record that was great, but it defied whatever expectations you had because it was not anything like Ultra Pop. And so it was hard to categorize in that this is a record I absolutely love, and it's a record I kind of don't want. Everlasting Gaze really kind of balances the line. I think They are expanding on the art side and the indie rock side, and this is a little heavier. We get Puzzler, we get New Christianity, we get Martyr Song, and then there are 3 remixes of Sport of Form, and the remixes are fine. I like them all, but New Christianity and Martyr Song are just killer tracks. It's a great EP, and I'm curious to see what The Armed is going to give us in the future. And at number 1, my favorite EP of the year was Persona by Gel. I like hardcore. What can I say? This is a phenomenal hardcore record. I love it so much. Gel rules. The end. And this EP blew me away the moment I heard it, and the more I revisited it, the more I liked it. And so it ended up being number 1 on my list. Great EP. My love of hardcore is going to show up in the full length list. Don't worry. But yeah, that's my EP list. Also, if you want to hear music, I'm going to keep referring back to the Substack. On both lists, at the end of the list, there is a playlist of songs from the top 10 EPs, so the albums I just mentioned. And then for the full lengths, I did the top songs from the top 20 because I did not want that playlist to be forever long. So you can hear music from the bands I've talked about here. There are links to check out all the albums, 30 through 1 and then 50 through 1. So make sure you go to the Substack asthestorygrows.substack.com, or you can find the link in the show notes. I will also put in the show notes links to Spotify playlist for all 30 EPs and all 50 full lengths that you can check out. Discover a new band. There's tons of great stuff. Right, on to my favorite full lengths of the year. There's a long list. We're going to start at 25. We're going to cut this list in half, get it to you that way. In at number 25, I have Foreign Hands with What's Left Unsaid. I saw Foreign Hands open for Currents last fall, I want to say, and they were phenomenal. I had already heard Bleed the Dream, and I loved it. So when What's Left Unsaid came out, I immediately snagged it. And I think the band is an up-and-coming band in the scene. If you like kind of a classic, I don't want to say Snapcasey type band because it's not really Snapcase, but I think it harkens back more to the late 90s, early 2000 metalcore before everything kind of got like kill switched and Underoath and became this like In Flames worship style of music. When metalcore was really just starting to experiment with some clean vocals and was just driving and heavy, the high-pitched scream vocals. I think that's where Foreign Hand fills a void, and What's Left Unsaid is a killer record. In at number 24, I have Mountaineer, their album Dawn and All That Follows. This was kind of a surprise record for me. It was submitted to me by Austin from Secret Service PR. I was not familiar with Mountaineer before then, but the band is playing a brand of post-metal, post-rock, shoegaze that I adore. And Dawn and All That Follows instantly blew me away as an album, and I instantly was like, I have to have the band on the podcast. And they were, and this is a record that's just gorgeous and atmospheric and really well done. In at 23, we have Casey with How to Disappear. If you're into a band like Holding Absence, you're going to like Casey and How to Disappear. This is a cool record. I was supposed to see Casey live. I was at the show. I ended up having to leave, and so I didn't get to see them. But How to Disappear is a great record. Check it out. In at 22 is the Lowrider Elephant Tree split, The Long Forever. Just doom, stoner, sludge metal. This is my personal preference this year, apparently. It's so much like sludgy doom metal in my life this year. And this is great. Elephant Tree put out some music earlier in the year, which was pretty good, and I enjoyed it. But their tracks On the Long Forever are phenomenal, and Lowrider's tracks just kick so much ass. The Horse You Rode On is a great song. Check it out. And at number 21, we have Love Sex Machine with True, and just atmospheric black metal, kind of heavy. It's phenomenal. And at number 20, this is probably the first curveball on my list, and it is Arctis by Arctis. And it is Arctis by Arctis. This is kind of pop metal. That's how I think I'd describe it. Maybe Evanescence-ish, but I think more pop. This comes to us from Napalm Records, and I don't know if this is a record I shouldn't like or I should like, but I like catchy hooks. I think at my core, I like catchy hooks, and this album is just ginormous catchy hooks, packaged really well. The songwriting's good. It's heavy. This is not the first time an artist and album from Napalm Records is going to make the list and be like, that doesn't fit with what's around it. But this is a great record. I love the songs. They're catchy. They get stuck in your head. It's a great record. In at 19 is Sawdusk with Antithesis. Just a phenomenal kind of black gaze indie rock record. Emily Highfield creating a really interesting soundscape on this record. Elevated so much better than Lunar Falls. Just taking that step forward. So check this record out. In at 18, Starflyer 59 with Lust for Gold. I finally pseudo got to interview Jason Martin from Starflyer 59. It was on the mailing list in written form and not audio, but that's okay. Lust for Gold is kind of a throwback to kind of that classic shoegaze era of the band. But as I wrote in that interview, I think the 8 songs on the album really encompass the band's discography beautifully. And I think if the band were to say like, hey, we're not going to put out new music, this would be a great way to kind of say goodbye as this album that spans their entire discography sonically and create something interesting. It's probably my favorite thing Starflyer 59 has released in a while, and they've been one of my favorite bands for a long time, and this just harkens back to something really special. In at 17, we have Respire with Hayraith. I think I'm pronouncing that right. This is Scram's Screamo Emo Violence with orchestration, with strings. It's gorgeous. The first time I heard Keening, I was like, holy shit, I need more of this in my life. Great record. Sticking in the Scram's Screamo realm, we have Frail Body with Artificial Bouquet. Frail Body's a band I've liked for a long time, and Artificial Bouquet is just the next kind of evolution and elevation of what that band can do. And at 15, we have Ghost Atlas with Dust of the Human Shape. Jesse Cash from Era just delivering gut-punching melodies and choruses on this record. The first time I heard it, I was just like, it's one of those records that you have to have on vinyl or CD or cassette, like whatever your preference is, maybe streaming, but you just got to put it on and sit like on your couch or in your big comfy chair and just like let the record wash over you. It's a great record. Jesse Cash had a phenomenal year. In at 14, Charlotte Wessels, The Obsession, symphonic metal from Napalm Records. Again, kind of like the Arctis record. You kind of go, didn't see that one coming. But I adore this record. Again, I just like really catchy hooks, and this is really catchy hooks in a metal package, and I dig it a lot. And at 13, we are getting more Jesse Cash with Era and Cure. Era just continues to write bangers. This was a phenomenal record. It's tough because I'm not sure if I like it quite as much as the band's self-titled record, but I think this one connected with me quicker, and I'm a huge fan of this record, and yeah, so. In at 12, The Ghost Inside, Searching for Solace. I know a lot of people don't like this. I heard it kind of get thrown in the Octane Core realm. People saying the band sold out. I really liked the band's self-titled album that meant a lot to me because it just came out and had lyrical themes that resonated with me a lot when I was going through my early days of sobriety and kind of working through letting a lot of faith things go and a lot of religious baggage. And so I have a connection to this new era of the Ghost Inside, and Searching for Solace, like I've said a bunch of times, it's big, catchy hooks. Like the guys can write a fucking chorus, and they do it on every song on Searching for Solace. It is banger after banger, in my opinion, and that's why it's on my list. In at 11, we have Venues with Transients. I love Venues. They're one of those rising empire bands I've kind of been obsessed with since discovering them. Just a record I went back to a lot because the way Robin's screams and Layla's vocals work together are great, and they're a band I love. And so this is a record I liked a lot. That brings us to our top 10. In at number 10, we have Trauma Ray with Chameleon. If you like shoegaze, you're going to like this record. Enough said. In at number 9, I have Imminence with The Black. Imminence is a band who I got to have on the podcast, and I really loved Hiding in Heaven, and I've been excited for what the band was going to do next. They gave us The Black this year, and it is just a phenomenally killer record. Heaven Shall Burn, Come Hell or High Water, Death by a Thousand Cuts, The Call of the Void, just track after track after track just pummels you. I'm so stoked that the band is coming to America next year and they're bringing Landmarks with them. It's going to be fucking awesome. In at number 8, Visions of Atlantis, Pirates 2, Armada. Some records you go back to a lot and you can't explain it. When I heard Pirates 2, because this came to me via John Freeman, I listened to it and I was like, okay, I like this. I like this. This resonates with me. I wrote a whole newsletter about discovering a love for symphonic and power metal over the last 2 years. Visions of Atlantis is one of those gateway bands. I got to have Visions of Atlantis on the podcast, which was awesome. And some records you don't think are going to have that place in your like album of the year pantheon, but you just go back to them over and over and over again. And Pirates 2 and Pirates 1 were records that I just listened to so much and so often this year that I just had to get it on the list. In at number 7, and I feel like 7 through 1 is kind of like, yeah, my musical just wheelhouse, and these are no does. In at number 7, we have Sumac with The Healer. Aaron Turner from ISIS. I have loved ISIS. I've loved Sumac. Aaron Turner is a phenomenal guitar player, vocalist, lyricist, and The Healer is just Sumac doing even more experimental, weird, noisy, doomy metal. And I absolutely love it. The songs are long. It's a record that took me a while to get into. Kind of similar in the 51 through 100 of the New Godspeed You Black Emperor record. Both of these records took a lot of time for me to get into and really understand what was happening. But once I did with the Sumac record, I was all in. I was sold. And The Healer's phenomenal, and I've come back to it a lot. And so it's in at number 7. In at 6, Touche Amore with Spiral in a Straight Line. This is a record that I adored the moment I hit play. Touche Amore is a band I've connected with for many years, and they're a band I still haven't seen live, and I would love to. But Spiral in a Straight Line is just the next great Touche Amore record, and I'm a big fan. In at 5, we have Planes Mistaken for Stars with Do You Still Love Me? The first record with Garrett after his death. This record is so haunting and so beautiful and so painful and so like majestic and angry, and it is it is what you want a Planes Mistaken for Stars record to be, as a band who's kind of aging and a little less in that angsty, chaotic phase of their career and more in a calculated aggression. And I think Do You Still Love Me just works. And that pain of knowing that Garrett is no longer with us, and this was done kind of in a time when he knew he wasn't going to be with us, is amazing. And at number 4, we have Boundaries with Death Is Little More.
It must be to be made new every day, to never be bruised by what you believe. Show me, show us what
Boundaries was my most listened to podcast on Spotify. It was number 1 on Spotify Wrapped. I think Boundaries is actually the most listened to podcast on YouTube right now. So if you discovered As the Story Grows because of Boundaries, awesome. Thanks for checking that episode out. A lot of people did. And Death Is Little More is a fucking phenomenal record. Hit you in the face, punch you in the mouth, hardcore. It's angry, it's mean, it's great. In number 3, we have Glassing with From the Other Side of the Mirror. Glassing, again, a band who I kind of discovered on Bandcamp a few years back, fell in love, and everything they have released since then is just great. This album came out on Pelagic Records, and it rules. A Glassing does screamo, emo violence as good as anybody. In the screamo, emo violence realm, we have State Vaults at number 2 with Children of the Moon.
the wind takes direction.
Another record where the instant I heard it, I went album of the year material. I got to talk to the band on the podcast and just had a phenomenal conversation about this record. And everything about this record works for me. No Gospel is such a great song. It's a song I keep going back to over and over again. It is one of my favorite songs of the year. And obviously the album is number 2 on my list of favorite records of the year. Number 1, With the Bullet, my no doubt from the moment it dropped that I heard it. Love Letter, Everyone Wants Something Beautiful.
Golden hands for everyone. You can't overthrow an apparatus this big. With cloud arms, crossway down to the ground till it sticks. Slit well, the flesh you push upon the flesh it flux.
I got to talk to J Moss about this record. I have adored this record since it came out. It is my most played record of the year, without a doubt. Everything about Love Letter is what I love about hardcore. Popular Means is my favorite song of the year by far. There's a great interview with Quinn on the New Scene podcast. I would highly recommend checking out that podcast. I think it will help connect to this record even more. A record that's already like a phenomenal hardcore record. There are records that make me love music all over again, and this is that record. So Love Letter in at number 1, Everyone Wants Something Beautiful. On the podcast front, we released 112 episodes of As the Story Grows last year. That's a lot. It's insane. We did a lot of work. It's crazy to think about the bands you interview in a year, and sometimes you talk to a band, but a year is a long time. Like, the years go by so fast. I understand. But sometimes it's like, oh yeah, that's a band I talked to this year. some of the bands I talked to last year, but the podcast aired this year. But all the same, there are so many incredible bands and artists that made the podcast this year. And it's wild that we did that 112 times. It's bananas. I enjoyed all the conversations I got to have with so many eclectic artists, so many amazing artists, so many bands coming back to the podcast for a second time. Like I said, Matt McDougall from Boundaries, he was the most listened to podcast of the year on Spotify Wrapped. He has the most views of any YouTube video for the podcast currently. There's a lot already in the works for 2025. I have already recorded 10 episodes for next year. So January, we're going to hit the ground running right out the gate, giving you guys an episode next week. And then we'll be back to 2 episodes a week the following week, starting January 8th. So I just want to say thank you so much for listening to this podcast, for tuning in, subscribing, listening week in, week out, checking out a new band. We changed the logo this year. We changed the theme music this year. We changed the theme of the show. For a long time, it had been finding humanity in an industry full of monsters. And now it's discovering your next favorite band, because the show has kind of changed over the last 4 years specifically. And I'm all about sharing new music, and hopefully you're coming on that journey with me. So thanks for listening. I hope everybody has a happy New Year's, and I'll see you in 2025.
The ruin becomes a ruiner. The ruin becomes a